Hello and welcome to the Project Management Prepcast. I'm your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner. This lesson is recorded with a live audience on Facebook and YouTube, and it is your introduction to the PMP exam. Here is our agenda, but first, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. Very glad to have you with us. So this is what we're going to take a look at here. I have 4 parts for you. We're going to go into a little bit of an exam overview, how to apply for the exam schedule, taking the exam. But I don't want to let you go at the end without also giving you a few ideas there in regards to what you should be doing now after you have watched this webinar here. All right, so let us get started. Yeah, but before we jump into part 1, please don't forget, we offer a complete online suite of PMP exam preparation tools. On the left here, you have the PM Prepcast. That's our on-demand self-study PMP training course at pmprepcast.com. And on the right, our exam simulator at pmexamsimulator.com, which allows you to test your exam readiness on thousands of exam questions. So in part 1, we are going to look at the PMP exam itself. Facts, figures, why the PMP exam, the prerequisites, and all of that. And please, if you do have questions, the live audience, feel free to just type them into the chat on Facebook or on YouTube. I'll bring them up and answer them as they come in. So, what is the PMP exam? Well, it is, according to PMI, the world's leading project management certification. It kind of supercharges your career for project leaders across all industries. So it's not focused on a single industry, and it helps organizations or your employer find the people they need to work smarter and perform better. And it's also kept up with the times, because when I took my PMP exam back in 2004, Agile wasn't even on the horizon. Okay, and now Agile is a major part of the PMP exam. That is why the PMP exam, keeps up with the times and is still relevant today. But the PMP exam is not the only exam that PMI offers. Let's move on here to the next one. Here you see the family of certifications from PMI. The one we are focusing on in this lesson right now is the PMP at the top left, but the CAPM top center and the PMI ACP top right, they are the other 2 best known, really, certifications from PMI. Then in the middle row, we have the program management professional from left to right, the portfolio management professional in the center, and the professional in business analyses on the right, and bottom left, risk management professional, bottom right, scheduling professional, and bottom center, PMI also does have the disciplined agile. I didn't put them here because this is way beyond what we want to talk about, because we want to focus on the top left. This is the 800-pound gorilla of PMI certifications, because over 1 million people across the globe hold a PMP. So it is quite well known. In fact, more often than not, when I tell people what I do, even though they may not be project managers themselves, they'll say, oh yeah, I have heard of the PMP exam. A colleague of mine has taken it, or yeah, we employ PMPs in our company. Okay, this is also supported by the fact that project professionals in more than 200 countries around the world have earned and maintained their PMP certification. And here, please note the word maintained, because your PMP certification is not for life. You have to renew it every 3 years. A little bit more about that maintenance later on. All right. There is a reason why project professionals in more than 200 countries have earned and maintained their certificate. And here are 3 of them, right? So first and foremost, having a PMP certification establishes your dedication and to project management and your proficiency in project management. Yeah, that's because in order to get that credential, you have to satisfy certain educational and professional requirements, and then you have to demonstrate that you can apply your education and experience to project management knowledge in situational and scenario-based exam questions. It's quite rigid and quite a hard exam. You gain a distinction, a recognition in this growing community of project management practitioners, and it increases your visibility within the organization as well, globally, with other professionals around the world. For example, PMI has its conferences around the world, so you can meet professionals from all over the world if you attend those conferences. Well, why should you take the PMP exam? Well, here we go. It adds value, right? The CIO magazine ranked the PMP exam as the top project management certification in North America because it demonstrates to your employer that you have the skills and the dedication to excel in the capacity as a project manager at the highest level. Right? The PMP also delivers benefits. According to PMI, generally speaking, somebody who has the PMP certification will earn more than somebody who doesn't have the PMP certification if you compare apples to apples. And it also proves that you work smarter. And here is a timeline of your career. Let's go there, and let me show you how these 3 arguments here fit into that. What we have here is kind of a timeline of a project manager's career. On the left-hand side, going up, we have the level of competence, right? How good a project manager are you? How experienced are you? And at the bottom, going from left to right, is the time, the time it takes to get there. At the bottom left, we have the contributor. That's how most of us started out, right? You are suddenly brought onto a project. You are a subject matter expert. You help others on the project to work on the project. And then, as things move on there in your career, suddenly somebody hands you a project maybe, and they say, here, why don't you do this small project for us? But you are a coin flipper. You're not 100% sure which of these various approaches and methodologies could I be using, right? So you don't know. You're kind of, I try this, I'll try that, and you learn from that. And at that point, by the way, this is more or less when the CAPM certification comes in, right? The Certified Associate in Project Management. Somebody who's worked on projects, somebody who does know a little bit about being part of a project team. Then as your career continues, we're going to the box in the center here, the consolidator, right? You've done your first few projects, you've learned a little bit, you have experience, you have the knowledge to make all of these big decisions that are necessary on projects and how to implement them with success, right? Now you are a bona fide project manager right there. People come to you, they give you projects, and they know that you can do it. And then at the top right, this is what we call the collaborative hero, right? This is somebody who really knows what they're doing. Project management at the highest level. And this is, between those 2 stars, this is where the PMP certification comes in, right? This is where you will say, okay, I'm a project manager. I have to get that certification. Everybody's asking me about it. Why don't I? Well, you might now say, but wait a second. Why can't I just go ahead and instead of doing the CAPM there at the bottom left, why don't I just take the PMP exam at that point? Well, this is because PMI says you can't yet you have to first fulfill these certification requirements here. All right. First of all, if you have a 4-year degree, it's on the left, and if you have a secondary degree, that is on the right. So a secondary degree would be something like a diploma or an associate's degree or a global equivalent. For example, I took an apprenticeship in Switzerland. I do not have a 4-year degree. So when I took the exam, I had to show that I had 60 months of leading and directing projects. Okay. There is also a third level where you only need, I believe, 24 months, but this is very, very focused. You have to take courses from a specific college that is accredited by PMI. Only a few people do this, so we're not going to talk about that. So you need the experience in leading and directing projects, no matter if you have a 4-year degree, 36 months, and a secondary degree, 60 months. But in both cases, you also need you need those 35 hours of project management education, right? So you have to take some kind of a course in order to prepare you for the PMP exam. Got a question here coming in from Candice about this, saying, does the 36 months of experience mean that I have to have worked as a project manager for 3 years? Yes and no, Candice. This all depends whether or not you've taken a break. So these 36 months, that is uninterrupted. So if you have worked for 36 months, 3 years, as a project manager without ever stopping, then it is 3 years, yes. But let's assume, you've been given a project, it took a year, then there was 2 months of nothing, right? There's another project, a year, 2 months of nothing. So those 2 months where you didn't work as a project manager in between, those don't count, right? So 36 months means actually working on a project, actually leading and directing the project. Thank you for that question there. That clarifies it, I hope, for everybody. The 35 hours of project management education, by the way, they are waived if you are a CAPM. PMI realized that if you are a CAPM, if you're studying for the CAPM, this is at the bottom left there, the yellow one, if you're studying down there, then most people actually study so much that it's not required for you to do additional studies to pass the PMP exam. So that is waived. And if you are looking for those 35 hours of project management and educational and training, then let me remind you of the Prepcast at pmprepcast.com. That's our PMP exam prep course, which we designed specifically to give you the knowledge that's needed so you can get ready to pass your PMP exam. But what if you lack the experience, right? What if you look at those requirements in the PMP Handbook and you're like, yeah, I don't quite meet the amount of months? Well, first of all, how much is missing, right? If it's just the 35 hours of training that's lacking, well, get the 35 hours of training. If you are at, say, 32 months of experience, well, that's only 4 months. So keep doing what you're doing and start studying, because by the time you're finished studying, as you will see in a bit when we'll talk about a timeline for studying and getting ready for the exam, the 4 months will have passed and now you are actually eligible to take the exam. But what if you, say, only have a year of experience, right? You're a junior project manager. There is nothing you can do. You have to have those 36 or 60 months of experience. PMI will not allow you to take the exam under those circumstances. So consider the PMI ACP, where you only have to have 12 months of project experience. Or, if you're really junior and you've just started out, you may have 0 hours of experience. Well, then consider the CAPM, where really everything, all you need is 23 hours of project management education. So pretty much any kind of training in project management that you can take will get you to the CAPM exam. All right, and this is it for part 1 of our introduction to the PMP exam here, a general discussion about the exam itself. Part 2, let's talk about the application, about the online form, and I have a few tips for you as well. By the way, the screenshot that you see here, that's taken from the PMI website. This is the type of form that you will have to fill in online. There is no longer a way of filling it in offline, like in a PDF document or something like that, and send it in. That PMI has stopped. Okay, so simply keying in all the data in your online application normally just takes a couple of hours, right? So you need to fill this in. But as many learn, is getting the data, finding all the data. What are all the projects I've worked on? How many hours did I work? How many months did I work on this project? What exactly did I do? How do I describe this project? That is a project in itself. So doing the online application, make sure that you gather all the data, that you bring it together, that you analyze this, and that you have everything before you start filling in the online application. You can get it started. I believe you have 90 days. So if you start today, you have to complete everything and send it off within 90 days. If you think it's going to take you longer, just give it some time there. There is nothing on this application that you wouldn't expect. Yeah, you have to type in your name and your contact information, your general education. Remember, you have to have either an associate's degree or a 4-year degree, so you have to type that in. Then you have to have those months of experience. Well, that means you have to put in those project management requirement months and hours. Actually, it's just months now. So the experience in leading and directing projects, you have to type all of that in. The form is there to prove to PMI, do you have the qualifications that it takes to, for the PMP exam? You can print a PDF document or just watch it online and see everything that you have typed in. A few tips here. I think the most important tip that I have for you is this here. Use PMBOK guide vocabulary as you fill it in and describe your project. This is important, especially important as you describe the projects that you have worked on. For example, in your company, you may call the project the document that initiates a project a project initiation document, right? But PMI in the PMBOK guide calls this a project charter. So don't call it what you call it in-house. Call it what PMI calls it, right? In this way, you show PMI that you understand projects from the PMI perspective. This is also something that you need to get used to. Looking at the PMP exam from the PMI perspective and getting into that mindset, okay? It makes everything just so much easier. The person who's reviewing your application understands the words you've used and can more easily ascertain that, oh yes, this person truly has the experience and the knowledge to take the PMP exam. Moving on here with a few more tips for you. First of all, prepare for an audit. Right? Audits are completely random, no matter what anybody tells you. Right? You may get audited, you may not get audited. What I always recommend people are doing is take that PDF document that you can create from your application, send it to your former employer and say, hey, I've circled my third project. That's the one I'd like you to look at. Is that okay? If I get audited, will you sign off on that? Right? In that way, you're ready and you know that the data, the information you've put into your application is correct. Then, if you are employed as a project manager by a company, list the direct supervisor sponsor as contact. So for every project that you have to say, this person here, if I get audited, will confirm that this is the truth. Okay. For an employee situation, that's easy because you just put your boss there, right? But what if you worked for a consulting firm and you have like 16 projects, right? With 16 customers. Now what do? don't put your customers in there, please. Because if you get audited, you have to get in touch with 16 customers, right? And 14 of these people have since left the company. They're no longer working there, and you'll have a hard time getting your audit completed. So no matter whether you work as an employee or work as a consultant, put in your boss, okay? That's who you want to have on your application. Right. And that kind of concludes the application and my tips for this. Now let's take a look in part 3 at the exam schedule. Okay. I have a recommended schedule for taking the exam. Now, this is sort of, it's a vanilla type of schedule, right? Some people do things earlier, some people do things later in a different order, but I try to put it in an order that makes logical sense, right? This may not be 100% perfect for you, but it works for most people most of the time. Here we go. All right. So at the bottom, you have a timeline, and then incoming are all the various items that you need to do for your exam. Usually, it starts out with somebody saying, okay, I want to take the PMP exam, and then you purchase your PMP exam prep training. Okay. It has to be a minimum of 35 hours. And I'd like to point this out. It's a minimum of 35 hours. The PMP exam is huge. It is extremely wide. Doesn't even fit on the screen here. So there's a lot you need to know, but you only need to know this depth, right? But there's really a lot. So these 35 hours that I have here, that's the minimum. Okay. And we'll see what that means in a little bit here, right? The next thing after you're done with that training, okay, then that means you want to join PMI, okay? And I'm putting this join PMI and submit application online intentionally in that order, because if you join PMI before they start charging you money, you actually get a discount. PMI members get a cheaper PMP exam, and the discount is actually so great that it makes sense to become a member. I believe the membership is somewhere around $130, and the discount you get is more than $130, right? So that's definitely something you want to look at. Okay. Previously in my recommendations, I said, do we only contact the previous employer or a current boss also? I would contact your current employer as well, obviously, right? Everybody who you put onto the application there is, you should contact them and say, hey, is this okay? Okay, that's kind of the idea behind that. Okay, back to the timeline. So join PMI, fill in the application, and then submit the application online. And that's the point where you might get audited and where Malikarium's question comes into effect. All right. And next, you have taken the training there at the bottom left. Now you want to take studies. You need to do some self-directed studying right there. Most people take about 5 weeks, about 100 hours of learning, reading books and maybe going through the training a second time, or reading the PMBOK guide, reading the Agile Practice Guide, reading the Scrum Guide, all of those things that are recommended generally as good practices in self-study. That's what you want to do there. And those squares, by the way, those little squares, that's when you start using an exam simulator and you apply everything to sample exam questions. Also note that that last 45-degree angle there, text acceptance and eligibility, 1 year. So once PMI says, yep, you're good to go, you have 1 year to take the exam 3 times. Okay, and at some point you are ready. Okay, you're ready to roll. You have to pay, yes. PMI wants some money there as well. And now you're getting closer to your end of your studies and you say, okay, I'm ready. I want to register. By the way, nobody ever feels ready. Okay. Don't think that there is a point where you go, yep, I'm ready. Nobody has that. Okay. At some point, you literally have to abandon the project and say, all right, I've done enough. This is it. I must be ready. I've done so much now. I've got to be ready. I've got to move on, and I have to register for the exam. Pearson VUE, PMI doesn't do the exam, take the exam itself. They have an external company that does that called Pearson VUE. So you register for them with them, and then you get tested. Okay, that's that little red box there that says exam. Okay. And you get tested. It takes 3 hours and 50 minutes. We'll see that in more detail in just a moment. And then welcome to the club. Now you are a PMP. And note there at the bottom right, it says 3 years. The PMP exam is valid for 3 years, and you have to recertify every 3 years. Don't worry, you don't have to take an exam again. That's not the point. Okay. And you have to earn PDUs and renew and pay a renewal fee and all of that. Completely different discussion topic. We're not going to look into that right now. I have a separate live stream about that where you can learn more about this. Okay. I also want to bring up this question here from PIY. He's from a recruitment staffing, brings 7 years of experience, 7 months of team lead experience, managerial experience. Am I eligible as a functional guy? Please advise. Okay. I think the main word here is you said, am I eligible as a functional guy? And because you personally call yourself a functional guy, I would have to say you are not. The PMP exam is specific for people who lead and direct projects. Okay. Based on this information, I would say you are not eligible for the PMP exam. But again, separate live stream. Do I qualify for the PMP exam? Search for that. My name, Cornelius Fichtner. Do I qualify for the PMP exam? Both on YouTube and on Facebook. I give you a 5-step process where you can go through and identify for yourself. Very easy, takes half an hour, and then you know for sure whether or not you qualify. Okay. There we go. There's another question from Sancha. What if your previous job that you submitted your PMP, I've worked on more projects than your present job? Doing the exam in February, still be able to use my previous? Oh, yes, of course. 8 years. So when you fill in your PMP exam, these 36 months or 60 months, they must have happened within the last 8 years. So if you apply today, that means, go back 8 years. Everything in that time counts. So it doesn't matter if you've only done one project with your current employer and 16 with the other one. Well, if it's within the 8 years, it qualifies. So it's all good from my perspective here. Moving on to part 4, the exam itself. How long is it? Number of questions you have to answer, and we'll also take a quick look at the exam results. All right, so exam duration. This has recently changed, and so you now have 180 questions that you have to answer in 3 hours and 50 minutes. In addition to that, you are required to take 2 10-minute breaks in between. You see that at the bottom there? 60 questions, break, 60 questions, break, 60 questions. Okay. Now, the important thing to know is you cannot go forward or backward, right? So it's a total of 4 hours and 10 minutes, right? So 3 hours and 50 minutes to answer the questions, plus the 10-minute break, plus a 10-minute break. That's 4 hours and 10 minutes. But if you are in the first 60 questions, you cannot go past the break. You cannot look at, well, what are the next 60 questions? You can't do that. So you finish those, you send them off, then you take the 10-minute break, 60 questions are next. Now you're in the center. You can't go forward, you can't go backward. You have to answer those 60 questions until you're done. Then you take another 10-minute break, and then you take the last 60 questions. Okay. And that's how it goes. This is why my number one tip is leave no question unanswered. Okay. You want to make sure when you're in the first 60 questions, answer all 60 questions. Every single question has to be answered before you say, I'm done, I'm moving on to the break, and then I'm taking the next 60. Because you can't go back. You can't change it. You can't, oh, I have an idea. Now I know what question 6 was. You're done. All right. Those 60 questions are gone. You cannot go back and change them. That's why you want to have these questions answered in that way. Candice asks another question here. Can I take the exam online from home? Yes, Candice, thank you for the question. You can indeed. When I took the exam, it was only available in the testing centers, but now Pearson VUE and PMI do offer the PMP exam online from home. That is actually a positive outcome from the pandemic, because before the pandemic you couldn't do that. Now PMI realized we have to offer it online because people do not want to go into a testing center. The testing centers were closed for quite a long time there. All right, back to the exam time. Here is also another thing that you want to do because of that 60 break, 60 break, 60 break. You want to know and manage your time right, okay? So this here is the ideal time management. You want to take 77 minutes for the first 60 questions, then take a 10-minute break. 77 minutes for the next 60 questions, take a 10-minute break, and then just work slightly faster and spend 76 minutes on the last 60 questions, okay? You definitely do not want to end up with something like this, where it takes you 90 minutes for the first 60, 90 more minutes for the next 60, and then you only have 50 minutes for the last. So you really want to make sure that you have your time management down pat. Akash asks, wait, no, wrong here. Are there any negative markings for incorrect answers? Would it impact my overall scoring? No, Akash. PMP exam questions are either right or wrong. There is no negative marking. So if you do not know the answer, guess. If you leave the question unanswered, it is incorrect, period. If you guess, could be B, you have a 25% chance of getting it wrong. If it isn't B, well, it's incorrect. It would have been incorrect anyway if you had left it unmarked. So no, there is no negative marking if you get a question wrong. Okay, so make sure that you manage your time properly here and answer every single question in every one of these 60 question blocks. You also have to understand that there are multiple question types. So we have multiple choice, multiple correct, drag and drop, point and click, and fill in the blank. That's a limited fill in the blank. So multiple choices, A, B, C, D. Which one is correct? C is correct. Okay. Multiple correct, A, B, C, D, E, F. Please select 3. And now you have to check, and you have to select 3 that are correct. Drag and drop. This is where you have something like a process. Do, check, act, plan. And now you have to go, okay, which is the correct order? Plan, do, check, act. There you go. Now it's in the right order. So you drag and drop things around. Point and click is where PMI will show you a graphic, maybe an S-curve from a budget. And now the question is, where in this S-curve is most money spent? And then you have to click into the graphic and go, I think here is where most of the money is spent. And then the fill in the blank, the last one, this is a limited fill in the blank, where instead of, when you have A, B, C, D, you click and you say A is correct. In that case, you have to type the letter A in. So instead of clicking on A, you have to go to your keyboard and hit the letter A. So that's what PMI calls limited. I asked PMI, why do you do that? And they said, well, to give a little bit of a variety, to break the monotony of just click, click, click. Oh, here I have to type. Okay, do something else, wakes you up a little bit as well. Then most questions are scenario-based. You are presented with a scenario, and for that, you have to figure out. Usually it's, what could you have done better? What might you have done better? How could you have resolved this? What do you do next? These kind of questions you have to expect. And the last one here is questions are vague, really, really vague. This is something that everybody talks about and everyone is surprised, even though it's known, right? When you, some people say, I've seen questions, I didn't understand the question, and the answers didn't make sense either. It was almost like the question and the answers were completely unrelated with each other, and you didn't really know what to select. So that's the type of vagueness you have to expect. Best thing to do is to go into this with the expectation the questions will be really, really vague. I know that's coming, rather than sitting there and suddenly going, oh my God, I have no idea what to do. Why is everything so vague? No, you're going to go, I knew this was going to happen. I can do this. Let's move on there. Okay. I got a couple of questions here I'm seeing coming up. In July, I've scheduled the exam 2 times, so I was canceled both times due to technical issues. Yes, okay. So Candace earlier asked about doing it from home. Make sure that you have a solid internet connection. Make sure that you have tested the hardware and the software. Sometimes things just break, your internet connection dies, and that's on you, unfortunately. If your internet connection goes down during the exam, you just failed your PMP exam. PMI does not give you any kind of benefit of the doubt, right? If something happens during the exam, technical difficulties, that's it. It's unfortunate, but it is what PMI does. Okay, there's a question from Niels. As a PMP myself, can I train peers for the 35 hours education requirement, or do they have to go training from the PMI education partners? Thank you for asking that. It's a very important question. Any training counts. If you look at the PMI, I'm not sure if it's in the PMI certification handbook or if it's in the PMP exam content outline. It clearly states that there are 5 types of training that you can take and that are approved. The first one is obviously, as you mentioned, the ATP, but there are others where you can go and get your education there. Okay. Good question. These 77 minutes, are they managed by the center? You need to track that yourself, right? This is important. That is why I'm saying you need to be able to do this here. 77, 77, 76. That's on you. You have to keep an eye on the clock. You have to know what's going on, because the system will not tell you, you're kind of running out of time. Nah, the system will just go, you're done after 3 hours and 50 minutes, and you didn't answer 30 questions. Okay, so completely on you to do this. Okay, let us move on here. Yeah, one of the best ways actually to know how to manage your time and to learn about all of these question types and to prepare yourself and learn from your mistakes is to use an exam simulator. Ours at pmexamsimulator.com, it has over 2,000 questions, and it covers everything that PMI requires in their exam specifications. We keep it up to date at all times, and we get dozens of 5-star reviews all the time. A big question that I get all the time is, what is the PMP pass rate? Well, the answer is only PMI knows. They are not talking, and no data is public. Let me jump right to the last bullet point there on the screen. 61%. If anybody tells you, oh, it's 70%, it's 60%, that's the pass rate, tell them they have no idea what they're talking about. That is incorrect. Each exam is scored on what PMI calls sound psychometric analysis. What they do, we believe, okay, again, they're not clearly stating how they're doing it. However, what we think they're doing is this. Each exam is generated in such a way that they are level, right? So your exam has a certain difficulty level. Your colleague's exam has roughly the same difficulty level. And the third person as roughly the same difficulty level. So it's not like you have a very hard exam, somebody has a very easy exam. No. This is, made sure that the average difficulty level of your exam is the same as the average difficulty level of somebody else's. But the actual pass rate, we do not know. PMI does not tell us this at all. At the end of the exam, you will receive an examination report. And there are 4 levels. It's either, you can see this here in those colorful boxes. The one on the far left, needs improvement, is red. That's when you really failed, right? Below target means, you didn't quite make it in this one, okay? Then the light green one is target. That's, yep, you're good. You did what was expected of you for this exam. And then above target on the far right, the dark green there, that's when, you're golden with this. You're really golden with this. These 4 levels are issued on 3 domains. So we have here in the table in the middle there, on the left, we have the people domain, we have the process domain in the center, and the business environment domain on the right hand side. So your goal has to be target in all of these. If you have people target, process target, business environment target, perfect. You've passed the exam because you're on target to pass the exam. Usually you can have one of these below target, and if the others are above target and target, you can still pass. So it's not like if you have one below target or one needs improvement, you will automatically fail. It is a mix of the questions and your answers. So that's kind of how you get scored. And this is also how you pass with 3 above targets. But what if I do not pass? Now what? Okay, first of all, this is what a not pass looks like. You can tell here in the exam breakdown at the bottom there that this person has a lot of red ones and didn't pass. Well, first of all, you can take the exam 3 times during that 1-year period. Remember, once PMI says you're good, you can take the exam. You have 1 year, and during that time, you can take it 3 times to try and pass the exam. So this is your first attempt. All right, didn't pass. Well, I have 2 more, and then you take it in that way and pass the next time. If you pass for the 3rd time, unfortunately, now that's it. You have to wait for a year. If you fail the exam 3 times during that 1-year period, you have a 1-year break, and now you can apply again. And then you can pass your exam there. Very, 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 very rarely will PMI allow somebody to take a 4th exam. There, 4th exam. I've had that happen in my whole career since 2008. Once or twice that a student of mine was allowed to take a 4th exam for extenuating circumstances or other reasons there, right? So this is how it works for when you fail. That's it for our overview here of the PMP exam, the introduction to the general things you want to know about this exam. I do not want to let you go without giving you some recommendations for taking action. Much of what we have talked about today is in the PMI Certifications Handbook. This used to be called the PMP Handbook. It is now the PMI Certifications Handbook. The first thing you should do is get this handbook and read pages 1 to 19. So go to pmprepcast.com/PMP as in PMP Handbook. And this is just a forwarding link. It'll open up the PDF document from PMI. And so it's an easy way for you to remember where to find this. So get this document as a PDF, printed if you'd like, and then read pages 1 to 19 to understand all the administrative things you need to know regarding the PMP exam. Okay. Next, some takeaways for you. All right, what have we learned today? Well, first of all, the PMP exam is the gold standard of project management certifications. Employers really want project managers to have the PMP certification. And nowadays, if you apply for a project management certification and you don't have the PMP exam, you might have a hard time getting in. It's often required. The eligibility requirements are very stringent, right? And you have to have those 36 or 60 months of experience, and you have to have the training. Without that, you can not take it. You need to have at least 36 months of experience and 35 hours of education. Without that, well, yeah, you can't really do it. You have 3 hours and 50 minutes to answer 180 questions on the exam, and you have to manage your time yourself, right? And we haven't really gone into this in too deep, but you have to have a recertification cycle. You have to go through the recertification cycle every 3 years. All right, that's it for right now for our introduction to the PMP exam. Thank you very much for joining me today, and good luck on your exam. And of course, until next time. But before you go, this lesson is part of a series of lessons in which I help you to be better prepared for the PMP exam. So please do visit pmprepcast.com/more to watch all of them.